Hello Astrobus subscribers, and welcome back to my next video in the series of planets, or not planets, the layer system. Next video on the layer system. And I've done an intro video for this series. I've done a couple different videos in this series, but I will explain it again because repetition helps you understand, and also, well, it bears repeating. So, because this might be somebody's first time in this series. So the layer system is a method of organization of the different ways that you could observe a star chart through. So are you looking at it through the house system? Are you looking at the individual planets? Are you looking at the hours, the signs, the nakshatras? There are even more beyond that I haven't talked about yet. So what the star chart is this gigantic sort of multi-dimensional thing, and you can only really look at part of it at a time. So when do you look at the signs as opposed to the houses? When do you look at the houses and signs together as opposed to the hour? This is a tool to help you understand how to break the star chart down into levels of perception so that you can see it more clearly by breaking it into its parts and then putting those parts together into a better understanding of the whole. So, without further ado, this is the sixth layer. Now, if you remember from my fourth and fifth layer videos, the fourth layer is a layer of perception that deals with the next possible moment, and it is related to Rahu, which is the planet that relates to consumption, and the symbol of Rahu, I suppose, is a head with no body. So it's like this chattering skull that consumes everything yet digests nothing because it doesn't have a body. So it's always consuming. And animals live in this state. Now, going like in the Hindu text where Rahu is described, it's described as a worshiper of Venus or a devotee of Venus. And the next layer, fittingly enough, is related to Venus. And Venus is the planet of desires. So if you're running around consuming everything, but you don't have there's no method to the madness, there's no method to your consumption, and then all of a sudden you gather up enough data from your consumption to generate a method of it, then you're in the sort of human state of awareness. And I did say in the fifth layer video that humans tend to exist in the fourth and fifth layer of consciousness, somewhere in between there. So you've got halfway between the unconscious consumption and the conscious understanding of what you're consuming. Now, that's not to say all people live there. It's just if you were to ask the average person what their level of consciousness is, and they were to answer honestly, it would be halfway between unconscious consumption and the conscious understanding of the method behind the consumption, which is ruled by Venus. So, what would be beyond that? So, the first thing you have to understand about the sixth layer is that people are not their desires. People are far more than the sum total of their desires. And so the fifth layer is completed basically when every desire is attained. And you don't have to necessarily live through these layers in order. People tend to be scattered around through the different layers because of life experiences and whatnot. But yeah, usually those experiences are not integrated into anything resembling a whole. They're just kind of confusing. And the sixth layer is a place of confusion. It is ruled by Neptune. It is probably the most dissonant layer. It is a place of... So let me put it like this. The fifth layer is a very happy place because you're looking for your desires, you're sort of understanding yourself, getting a method to your madness. It's what the New Age people talk about when they talk about accessing fifth dimensional consciousness, but they never talk about what's beyond that. And what's beyond that is identifying yourself not as the things that you do want, but maybe as the things that you don't want, or the things that you're confused about. And this layer of awareness is ruled by Neptune, as I've said. And Neptune is the planet of dreams, of the unconscious, of the confusion, basically, the dissonance. It's also a planet that's related to water, floods, nature, and the reason that all of these things are under the side of Neptune is that, or the planet of Neptune, the sphere of Neptune, is that they all represent an overwhelming sense of complexity. And the layer of the chart that's associated with this layer is, or the level of perception of the chart that's associated with this layer of perception is, what's it called? Is the house system and the aspects. And the reason that the house system and the aspects are related to Neptune and the sixth layer and the sense of general confusion and dissonance that Neptune always brings with it is that the aspects are basically a connection between two different desires that you might have. Now, sometimes those desires get along, they play nice together, and that would be if the desires are in trine or sextile to each other. So if they're skipping 1 or skipping 3 in between the signs that are being related, then that would be a trine or a sextile. But sometimes these desires are not related. And what happens if you have two desires that are pushing in opposite directions? So for instance, let's talk about Gemini and Sagittarius, right? To randomly pick two. Gemini and Sagittarius are in opposition to each other, but they both represent desires in this sort of fifth layer space. So what happens if you have the desire to have dialogue and question your beliefs conflicted or sort of in conflict with the desire to monologue and preach your beliefs to others in sort of a very straightforward way? Well, then that would be a source of tension, and that would bring about confusion because you cannot identify with your desires anymore because now your desires are in conflict. And that makes the sixth layer a place of greater self-awareness because you realize that you cannot identify yourself with your desires, but also a place of great frustration because it's a place of conflict. And I will talk more about how to organize this conflict and this inherent contradiction that exists within the human mind in later videos. But until then, don't get too caught up with the sphere of Neptune. Know that this is an intermediary stage. It's a stepping stone on the way to a more holistic and comfortable space. But, I think I would be doing people a disservice if I just said that people are the sum total of their desires as described in the fifth layer, because many people have experience of things beyond that, things that are uncomfortable, things that are in conflict, maybe even two things that they like in a sort of dissonant relationship to each other. So that is my video on the sixth layer, and if you have any comments, please leave them down below, and I will try to answer your questions as I am able. Thank you.